Okay, so let me start off now. Come on, fella. Oh, wow. Oh, it was working.
Whoa, who is that
Nice.
guy?
Okay, it was Luigi. All right, so anyway, I work on a television show called Defiance that's running on Sci-Fi Network. Episode 3 just aired last Monday. Episode 4 is going to be airing this coming Monday. The season's still going on, so please watch. Anyway, so Defiance is a television show in which a series of aliens, these are some of them, all lived on a solar system far, far away. The solar system exploded. They realized it was going to happen. All of the aliens left their solar system and came to Earth, which they thought was uninhabited, but they arrived in 2013. So they got there were some negotiations, then something happened, then there was a war, and they all got, a bunch of trouble. And eventually they ended up at St. Louis after a whole bunch of these machines that terraformed the planet crashed and malfunctioned and made over everything. And so now they don't have internet or planes. It's true. I don't know exactly why. I never followed the science of it. But the point is the aliens are now on Earth, and they're having to survive there and do stuff with other humans. And they wanted me to create a few of the languages for the aliens, and I was going to talk about the writing system that I developed for one of the languages for one set of aliens, and these are they. They're called the Castithans, and that's how you say the language, or that's how you write it anyway. You say Castithan. That is Tony Curran, who's a very, very nice gentleman, Scottish gentleman, who pronounces the language very well. I was kind of surprised given his thick accent, but he's just outstanding. To give you just a short idea of what the language looks like, it's pretty much, if I tell you it's robustly head final, you'll fill in the rest. So this is, this seemed like a sensible sentence to put up there. But it would be, and it kind of parses like that. It's easily figure outable. I mean, you should be able to get the rest of the language from there. But anyway, so the writing system was inspired by this. I really wanted it to write like this, and that was my idea going in. So then this is what I did. First, I started off with something much more angular. By the way, my slides are up because I sent them to the LCC5 Saturday. Anyway, so this is what the writing system originally looked like way back. I mean, ignore the scribbled goat on the bottom. It's really the top part. So something that was very angular, very, very simple, semi-featural. You'll be able to pick out some of the featural stuff. I don't want to be in frame. They can hear me. Anyway, all right. So it kind of looked like that. But we'll get to see some more close-up examples. And my idea was to evolve this language, this writing system. I don't want to stand in front of the screen. Evolve the writing system so that it wrote the way I wanted it to in the last one. So this is just my handwriting, so please bear with. This is the Wheeler series. So we have, I think it's K, G, Super K, Super G. That one's G, so Nga, and that one's just a Wheeler nasal. All right, so we'll call this time depth 1. At time depth 2, when they have some sort of a stylus, it starts to kind of round a little bit. So you can see how this basically works. So if you're trying to hit all the points, you're starting at a point at the upper left or the lower left, someplace on the left. This is a writing system that goes left to right because I was creating a font. And because if you're creating a font, it's easier to create a writing system that goes left to right because font programs were invented by people that speak English. So anyway, you can see how they kind of start to get, curved up a little bit. And then basically at time depth 3, when I created the font, this is now what they look like. Anyway, remember those numbers because I'm going to refer to them later. These are some of the vowel systems. So those were all, I skipped over a little bit. This is an abugida. So all of those systems, every single one of those has an inherent vowel, which was an ah vowel. So that was ka, ga, ka, la, na, and ga. Anyway, so here's the K characters. That's ka, and then that little pot there indicates a long ah. So there's no marking for the inherent vowel. When it's long, you have this pot. So that's ka versus ka. And then that's a separate vowel there. That's is and that's ki, and then the long vowel is ki. Originally, you also used the pot to lengthen the vowel, but then they changed that out in favor of just duplicating the little vowel bit. So that was time depth 1. Time depth 2, we start to write this out a little bit. And you can see how you're like, especially with the one on the right there, you're trying to basically get both of the lines, but trying to make it all in one stroke if possible. And that was really how these things evolved, by putting them into syllabic glyphs and trying to do it in one stroke as nearly as possible. And so then eventually they got fontified in this way. And so there you go, ka, ka, ki, ki, except with vowel lengths and pronounced well. All right, here are a couple of others. So to give you some of the principles behind the writing system as far as how it's used now, there are certain things that keep occurring as in principal parts for this writing system. So these were kind of the emphatic T, which I never said what it was. Right there it's transcribed as an ejective, so that would be ta and u. And then this is the pre-nasalized D there, da and do. All right, so it looks like that there. Time depth 2, it looks like, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped time depth 2. Here's time depth 3. Okay, so you can see what happened. It kind of got curvilinear, but these are actually now the same exact shape. So u and nu, they look exactly the same. So what I did was there's a convention in the Castithan writing system where a dot means something extra is missing. So this is the basic way that you can distinguish between these two. You just have to memorize that's what the dot means. Here's another way that you can see the dot. So we have this tha, and then when you add the u vowel, that little line that goes up and down just kind of gets swallowed. So you put the dot there and say like, sorry bro, there was a line there. It's not there anymore. And then these guys, they just actually accidentally end up looking the same. So I put a dot to distinguish them because that just seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Here, I will show you very briefly how this works.
There's no whiteboard on the other side.
What?
Erase.
What? There's a whiteboard on the other side?
No.
What? Well, of course I'm going to erase. Because there's no whiteboard on the other side. Who suggested there was?
It's the Wi-Fi.
No, that didn't even work very well anyway. All right, so so basically you have like this little bit, right? And then there's 2 lines underneath it. Sorry. And then to connect it, there was this vowel O does that, E does this. And then when you actually have to end up connecting the 2, they look pretty much the same because you just go kind of like that. And so they both ended up looking the same, so one gets a dot, and I decided it was whoa because it seemed like there was more missing there, or it made less sense for that to be that way, so I made it have a dot. Anyway, so that's some of the principles behind this thing. Let's see, more principles. Oh yeah, so you'll see that there's a lot of these little loop-de-loops. Some people who have seen the script have commented that it kind of looks like Thai. Well, Thai didn't actually inspire it directly as in the way that it looks, but Thai basically gave me the decision that I could get away with all these little loop-de-loops, because this is actually Thai down here, and look at all those things. And people seem to write that way. I think it's ridiculous. I wouldn't tolerate those kind of loops, just writing English. But I figured if somebody does, then somebody else could. So then we have to deal with all the loops of Castithan. Anyway, so to show you kind of how I use this, we're gonna, all right. So the language, of course, evolves over a period of time. So we have something that looked originally in time depth 1 like this, which now is pronounced Bihalajve. Yeah. So, the sounds changed over time. But what I did to make the writing system complicated, because of course everything that we've gotten for television and movies as far as writing systems goes is like, this is the letter for X, this is the letter for Q, this is the letter for C. It's like garbage. And so I thought to make it maximally complicated, why not just solidify the writing system at time depth 1, which is what I did. So, more examples. This is just to show you how some of the meanings change. So you have these older words that meant reticent, dawn, that now mean dawn, or what used to mean dawn now means past, and what used to mean reticent now means dignified, which tells you a little bit about what these people are like. I think they're kind of shirts on the show if you've seen it. It's funny. Anyway, so this is what the after effect of it was. So we have these 3 words here that all start with the same syllable, ba. And this is how they end up getting written. And focus on just that first syllable there, and you'll notice that it's written in 3 different ways, and basically you just have to memorize it. But it's because they came from 3 different sources. So one is just a regular B on the top. The other one is a formerly prenasalized B, and it lost its prenasalization when it comes word initially. And the third one is that emphatic B, which I have written as an implosive that I'm not going to pronounce. Anyway, all right, to show you a bit about how this thing kind of got fleshed out, I want you to memorize this guy that kind of looks like a happy paperclip. That's a syllable for foo, just regular old foo, okay? So you're going to be looking for this guy in the next set of forms here. I'll go over each line. I kind of made them color-coded, but you can't see it if you're me. Let's go line by line. So the first one, we have it right in initial position. That was its protoform, which is something like tu fao, and now it's pronounced quo. So tu is pronounced quo in this situation. The next one is, of course, just pronounced tu, as you might expect. In the next one, it's pronounced do, because, of course, the old T voiced intervocalically. The next one is pronounced do, because in addition to intervocalic voicing, there's word final vowel lowering for high vowels. So what was, ada, atatu, ata-atu is actually a reduplication now when it became adado. All right. And then the last one, there was simplification between voiceless consonants. One of them had to be a fricative. And so what was tu, now it just becomes a regular T. So what was kisu, actually it would have been initial, right? So kisutusu becomes kesuto. All right. So those are the first ones. These are, but then I actually thought that was going to be it, but then I realized there were more. This is one where it's pronounced to at the end of a syllable, and that's because it actually was a geminate previously, and geminates didn't devoice, or rather, degemination happened after intervocalic voicing, and so you can actually have it word finally come out as to. I don't think you can have that word initially though. In the middle, you can also have it do because of the gemination again. And then, oh yeah, that's another one where it comes out do at the end because there was, again, the vowel loss in between the voiceless consonant, voiceless fricative and a voiceless consonant. So, I'm supposed to say what these mean, sorry. Let's see, I don't remember. Oh, that's like a worm-like thing. Tuhongo, that one I really don't remember. I don't remember that. Atado, I'm pretty sure that's middle. Kesetso is doctor. Seto is just a name. Tietolo is, it's a push, that's it. Tietolo is a push, and diflo is to leave, or like, it means desertion, I guess. Anyway, but some of the things like, I can just show this, but it's, kind of like, people often ask, well, what's the point of having English's crazy spelling system? Well, it does have advantages. In that even if it's not directly spelled the way that it's pronounced, sometimes there are certain advantages. So in this case, you have kind of a little mini paradigm here. One of these is, I think, the imperfect, and the other one is the perfect, that don't sound anything alike in the present. One is sudula, and the other one is sukwa. And you think, well, how are those words related? Why is this D becoming a K? And it's because they were originally T's. And you see, it's pretty compositional, I guess. At time depth 1, the L was just inserted because you couldn't have 3 vowel mora in a row. And so if you just look at the spelling system, it actually doesn't make sense. You can see that these forms are related, even though they don't sound as if they're related anymore. But in addition to that, there's also still just irregularities. So I haven't included the protoforms here, but basically there's the spelling on the left. There's what you would think it should be pronounced like based on the regular rules of the Castithan spelling system, and then how it's pronounced now. So we have like Quavospu, which just comes out as Quospu because the middle syllable got cut. Same thing happened with Mohiro, which is just Mohiro. That's some sort of a measuring term. I don't know what the first one is. And this one, oh, I'm sorry. I switched to that romanization. That's IPA the second one. So you would expect that to be Yeke, but it's actually Ike. And that I explained because it's a postposition. Ike is a general locative. And so it was never really in a position where the stress was super stressy. And then the next one, oh gosh, that's a really strange word, actually. You notice our little paperclip friend there. He's there, but there he's completely silent because the stress was on the second syllable, which means that the I broke and became a diphthong with an onglag. So the first vowel was lost, and so it should be chena, it's actually china. Yeah. Anyway, it's one of those things you just have to learn. Anyway, so now we have up there in the writing system, Bihalajete, which looked like that, and now looks like that, and it means thank you very much. So, okay, I have no idea who has the mic now, but any questions? Aaron has the mic.
So this is a logistical question for the font itself, because working with writing systems with my students. What font making program did you use to get the lines that beautiful?
Font Lab Studio.
What is it called?
It's called Font Lab Studio. You can achieve the same precision with Type Tool, which is also a Font Lab product, but you can't do a lot of the other things. So this, especially since it's an Abugida, relies heavily on contextual ligatures, which you simply cannot implement with, you can't implement it with Type Tool, and I don't think that you can do it with iFont, which was the program that you were using. I recommend it. It's very expensive. It's $600.
Okay.
But Type Tool is cheaper. It's only $100.
Tony on IRC asks, what kind of writing media did they use, and did they change it since the letter forms changed to less
Yes.
angular ones? Was there some other reason? Of course, this assumes the angular forms are in universe.
Yeah, so it did change. What happened was, well, the greatest part about creating things for civilizations that are now destroyed is you don't have to be that specific. But what I was imagining was something that was much more like the oldest forms, much more, kind of like a punchy thing. Like with the clay tablets, something that was very, that would make sense, where you just want to make pretty straight lines. There are some angles, but then moving to some sort of a stylus type system, where it simply became faster and easier to sort of round out those forms, now that you no longer had to do the precise angularity of the old forms. So that's kind of a weasel answer, but honestly, the planet where they live is gone in the universe. It's been destroyed. They don't even remember it. Well, maybe some of them do, but they're dying. It's so sad. So there you go.
Now, I haven't seen Defiance yet, but where does this writing occur? And is it full of these irregularities, as you've described it, or is that the evolution of it? In other words, what happens to 2, or does it have all those different allophones in it? And then how do you expect any one of us geeks to learn this?
Well, I'll answer the first question, or the last question first. It's not that bad. I've gotten kind of used to it. It was really tough at first, honestly, but now I've kind of gotten used to it. So writing is a little bit of a challenge, but I can read it kind of okay now. I'm getting pretty good. So it is possible. I don't think it's as bad as Tibetan. I think Tibetan is the worst ever devised, and if you haven't ever looked it up, give it a look. It's really incredible. But it's all over the show. They put it on signage all over the town, everywhere on the set, which was really, really cool. Some of it was not designed by me, and those are not correct by any stretch of the imagination. You can easily look, knowing how the ligatures work, you can just look at something and tell it's wrong, very simply, without even knowing what it says. But I also did design a lot of stuff that shows up on the set. One of the most visible ones, once you get around to episode 10, I think, there will be election posters that were done in various native languages, and those are pretty fun. And there was a middle question there that
I forgot it too.
I forgot. Okay.
Okay, so that's really cool. The alphabet, or the Abugida preserves the writing system, preserves the ancient pre-sound change word forms,
Yeah.
and the spoken language is quite different from somewhat different from what you're actually reading.
Yeah.
How do you keep track of the modern versus the ancient word forms?
Okay, yeah. So I just want to throw out another comment there. It's changing again, so this is the best part. The way that I write it here, that's how the adults that came from the home world speak the language. but now they're producing offspring that were born on Earth and never knew their home world, and they're learning the language, but they're not learning it like that. So it's getting evolved even further. It's fantastic. But on my document, I never use spreadsheets because I just don't like the way they look. It needs to look like a dictionary in order for it to make sense to me. So I just use documents in Pages, which is the Mac version of Word, and just create dictionary files that are like 300 some pages. And so with Castithan, what I do for every single dictionary entry, first comes the orthographic form in the font. Then comes a form that's in just like a monospace font that tells me exactly how to type that, right? So it's just that, but done in like an English font, so I know. Then comes the Romanized form, which is for ease of use. Then comes the IPA. Then comes the part of speech. No, wait, no. Yeah, no. Then comes the IPA. Then comes the proto-form. Then comes the part of speech. Then comes the definition. So I keep track of the proto-form for every single word, especially in the cases where the spelling has changed, because I didn't even get into the further irregularities, like when they have borrowings that come in, and also words that were created at some point in time later. So I just keep all that information right there in the lexeme. Seems to work out okay, even though I can't sort.
Do you use a program to apply sound changes? Or track
Yeah, okay.
those?
Well, it's going to be a very non-helpful answer here. There's a fellow named Josh Grant Young, who is now Josh Birch. He was an Esperanto speaker and a conliner. And he created a sound change program for another program called FileMaker Pro. It's just a file on there. You have to have FileMaker Pro for it to work. And that is the best sound change applier I've ever seen. It does historical sound changes, it just generates words, it was great. At the beginning, when I was working on all my sound changes, I fed them in there to make sure that I was getting the orderings right and it wasn't doing any bizarre surprises. Now I've just memorized them, so I just applied them myself. But anyway, it's not a bad way to go at the beginning so that you make sure you're not making any mistakes.
How many speakers of the language are there in the time frame of the show? Do you know?
An actual number is not something I have
Or
off the top
just
of my head.
in general?
Well, a number of thousands. There are, I want to say of the aliens that came to Earth, Castithans comprise like, I want to say 25% of all of them that came to Earth. And so there's got to be several million of them in total. So there's got to be at least like 100, 200, 300,000 Castithan speakers. And the fun part is that I'm only working with the ones that are in the show, which are the ones in St. Louis on Earth. There are others all around the Earth, including a huge chunk in Brazil. So I imagine things would look very different there. They probably have lots of different borrowings.
In the show, I noticed that there are a lot of religious ceremonies for the Castithan. Do they use the ancient forms in those ceremonies?
No, this is where the ancient forms come up. They actually, it's almost kind of like I don't know if you've heard of taboo languages, but essentially, and there's a backstory for this, which I don't want to get into because I think it might be too spoilery, but they have a set of pronouns, in fact, that can trigger an older form of the language. But it's not actually a real old form. It's an old form that they've constructed. So it's actually a form that never really existed at any point in time in the past. But it's only used when people get really, really pissed off on the show. No, actually, you know what? There is actually a point where they do use old Castithan. But it hasn't been seen on the show yet. You'll see it.
How many hours does it take you to develop?
Which part? The font or the language?
Yes.
So I started working on Defiance in November of 2011, and I worked on Castithan, and both Castithan and Raythan, just the languages still like March, and I got it up to like, I'd say like 75%. It was in March, that was the time when I actually pitched to them the idea of having writing systems, which they agreed to, which I thought was awesome. And then the writing systems themselves took, like, I'd say a month of work, but then they kept, getting constant updates. I don't know how many versions of Castithan I went through until I finally got all the bugs.
You're giving me calendar time, not effort time. I'm saying, how many hours of actual work? Because I see you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on it. It's sleep.
No, it's probably like 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days
Oh
a
my
week.
God.
But seriously, that's all I do now. I just work. But for a given language, probably I want to say about 400 hours. And then for the writing systems, it would have been less than that. Say like 150. Sounds about right.
So how do you get a sense of like the sound changes? Like I should have this amount for this period of time that this language, this proto language is at a time depth of X years. How do you know how many sound changes you should put together to get something that's a reasonable amount of change over that time period?
There's actually no real way to answer that question, because certain languages will have more, especially when you're talking about phonological sound changes, certain languages will have more over an X, say over 1,000 years than others will. And I don't know if there is a very sophisticated linguistic analysis of that where you could even get an average. I don't know if they've gotten there yet. If they haven't, linguistics hurry up. We need that stuff.
So you just sort of do it like, okay, here's some sound
I
changes. Works.
I get a good sense for where I want it to be and where I want it to have come from, and also factor in, especially when you're working with deadlines like these, I factor in how much time I have and where I want to start from. So I kind of do it by feel. But 100 years from now, they'll look back on me and say, "Oh, what a hack." That's fine. It's fine.
I have another question. So when you're setting up these older routes, do you have, so you pick one route and then you turn it into one modern word, or do you take one route and turn it into 4 or 5 modern words that may or may not sound the same?
It depends. I mean, it totally depends on the word. And of course, some words don't change over time, as happens. Apparently the word for son, like not as in son like that, but your offspring like hasn't changed since Proto-Indo-European. It's bizarre. It hasn't even really accrued, that many, I guess, extra meanings. It just depends. So sometimes, you'll have one word and it's just a direct change. But, that will happen most often with descriptors. So especially things that describe, the human condition or emotions or anything like that. Those things are really volatile. Just, they can change over the course of 100 years really radically. Other words, it just depends. Often, what I will end up doing, sometimes I'll have the proto word and its surface will be nothing, but there will be an affixed form of the word or some sort of reduplicated form of the word that will survive, so I just keep a record of it. So I have it there. It kind of depends on the word. I actually have my dictionary here.
Last question.
Yes.
Okay, another from RC, George Corley, I believe. In the show, there are several shots of Eureka writing Eurathian in her journal. How accurate is the content there? And will we see some handwritten Castithan in the show?
You should have seen it all. Some people say that, I don't know why. You should have seen it already, but you just have to look in the backgrounds. But you'll see more Castithan handwriting later on. So for Reese's journal, it is all 100% accurate for what I was translating at the time. They wanted me to translate the entire opening dialogue for the show into Arabian and then put it, in the writing system so that you write it in the journal. And then they said they wanted it over the course of a weekend. It was like, this is ridiculous. I ended up pulling it off, and so that was all accurate. But then they changed what the monologue was. So now it is correct, but it reflects a version of the monologue that you'll never ever see or hear. What happened with the journal though was the art department wrote it all out, everything that I had up to a certain point, and it looks beautiful. They did it with pencil, but it looks just gorgeous. And then Stephanie Leonidas took over for those live takes. And her writing is noticeably different, but she did a wonderfully admirable job. So yeah, kind of yes and no there. And then I think we need to move on. All right, thanks so much.